Fragrant Earth has been in the business of aromatherapy and essential oils for over 30 years. It has a long heritage and history of producing very different and fine materials for professional aromatherapy. In fact, the brand is known around the world, from Japan to Australia, Australia to the USA, and indeed, of course, in Europe. Fragrant Earth is sometimes criticized because it is supposed to have high prices. Pricing in aromatherapy, like anything else, is a sensitive issue. I want to discuss with you today some of the factors that affect the pricing of essential oils. We'll be discussing the term quality. Now, I want to make very, very clear at the outset that quality is a notion. It's not an absolute. What does quality mean to you? It can mean many things. Here at Fragrant Earth, we have always defined it in a simple way. Quality is fit for a purpose. The published price lists of Fragrant Earth, for example, refer to those which, as I mentioned earlier, go directly to professional aromatherapists. Of course, that doesn't mean to say that unpublished prices are available. Available to whom? Well, we sell large volumes of material to perfumers, to industry, all of which we classify as industrial material. These are at much lower prices than those available for professional aromatherapy. Why so? Well, let's look at the books that are published about aromatherapy, popular books. All of them seem to refer to quality, this idea of something of high value, of a different nature. Often the books refer to lavender as natural. Yet I can tell you directly that many so-called lavenders that you find in the mass market are not natural, are far from natural. So apart from quality, we also have to begin to decide what natural means. What does it mean to us as either therapists or as consumers, as individuals, human beings? Natural is difficult to define. Once you have begun an industrial process of a plant, at what point does it maintain its naturalness, or at what point does it become an industrial process material? Here you see lined up a variety of lavenders. So when you say to me, lavender, I will say to you, what do you mean by lavender? If we look here, we find, for example, that this little group over here are called lavandins, lavandar. It's a cross, it's a hybrid. How do you reproduce a hybrid? Because it doesn't normally set seed within a plant material. The answer is that you take a clone, a cutting in other words, and you reproduce that same plant 1,000,000 times. Eventually the clone loses energy. It loses the ability to even produce a good plant. Rose growers, if you think of in the garden, you know this very clearly. Classic example is the peace rose, which used to be upright and firm. But over the years, it becomes a little floppy, it becomes prone to disease, etc. It's the same for lavender. These crosses, or lavandins, are actually much cheaper than the fine lavenders. They produce more essential oils because they're a cross between angustifolia, true lavender, and spica, or spike lavender. Now, spike lavender is much more camphorous in its content of chemicals, if you like, makeup of essential oil. Whereas lavender has a bias to acetate. Now, if you mix the two together, do you have true lavender? The answer is no. You have an intermediate. So we find that this is called lavandula intermedia. It's something between the two, but not quite. Now, of course, when we come to perfuming, or when we come to retailing, these lavenders, which are actually lavandins, you remember, are hybrids, are sold into the market as lavender. Now, if, for example, in aromatherapy that you've said, okay, lavender contributes to sleep, say, or it contributes to relaxation, or it de-stresses. Well, of course, I've just said that camphor, which is a stimulant, is found in the spica. So putting those two together, it doesn't take much in the way of thought process to see that lavandin will not do the same as lavender. So you come back to quality. Does it mean lavandin is poor quality? Absolutely not. It's very fitting, say, for perfumery. It's very fitting for even floor polish. Each has a purpose. So let's not confuse the issue of quality with purpose. If we then say in aromatherapy that we want to have or induce relaxation, or we're looking for even spiritual values, as some of aromatherapists do, then we say, well, let's get back to as near to nature as possible. When you visit the wild growing areas for lavender, and you look at a population of lavender, you'll see dark blue ones, light blue ones, grey ones, pink ones, all manner of different colours. Now pause for a moment. If you travel to the growing areas, whether that's in South Africa, or whether that's in Australia, or into France, Moldavia, Bulgaria, wherever you go, you see fields of one colour. So what's happened? Has it been dyed? No. We come back to the idea of a clone. What's happened is that a grower at some point has taken from the wild a particular colour, because lavender isn't always grown for essential oils. It's grown for decoration, it's grown for little seeds that go in sachets and so on. So a clone, we come back to a clone, a cutting. Does it have true value in contributing life force? I mentioned the word life force because it crops up so often in books about aromatherapy. We may call it vital energy, we may call it élan vital, what you like, but it's this idea that there is something more in nature than just pure chemistry. True, sometimes we judge the value of or the quality of an essential oil by looking at the chemistry of it, because naturally, as I said to you, there should be more linearyl acetate in a true lavender than there would be in a spike lavender or Lavandula spica. Think all this through then for a moment. We have tons and tons and tons of material grown in lavandin. That makes it much cheaper than true lavender, of which there isn't that much grown. In fact, we could say that one time there was only about 200 tons of true lavender that has been grown in France. Now, France grows about 50% of the world production of lavender, but it's falling. Why? Climate change, you may guess? Not really. It's fungal problems. If you continue to grow the same sort of species in place after year, you get a certain sickness that develops in the ground. Same applies to strawberries as it does to lavender. Same applies to roses as it does to lavender. If you then grow just a clone, and one of the most famous clones that we find is in fact Lavender Mayette, the clone Lavender Mayette. That contributes nearly all the true lavender that most people buy in the shops. If you look at Fragrant Earth, we favour a different approach. We try to buy population lavender. In other words, ones that pink, blue, green, all the things that I mentioned earlier. Population lavender isn't easy to harvest because a clone will have the same shape and the same form from year to year, have the same colour. Same with the lavenders, they're a hybrid, so they produce the same shape and same form. When you start looking for population lavender, you don't know what you're going to get. Now that becomes the basic, fine lavender that Fragrant Earth call high altitude lavender. And you can begin to appreciate it is a lot more expensive than the others, which we offer, if you like, behind the scene commercially to large producers, large users, and the perfumes I mentioned earlier. But we don't offer it into aromatherapy unless we specify specifically that you have a lavandin grosso or a sumyan or something else. We say, look, this is for a specific purpose. If you're making a small bath oil or something, or you're making a soap, these are perfectly acceptable. If you are dealing with medicine or therapy, or you have a special spa where you're talking about coming here for a relaxation, something different, wouldn't your consumers or customers or patients or clients, whatever you call them, expect something different, of higher value? That's why we talk about high altitude lavender. If you want to go a little further, you can have wild alpine lavender. Take it back into your home. Experience the difference. Feel the difference yourself. Now here, as you see, I've separated out one or two of the materials which are consistent with what I'm saying. For example, here is spica, spike lavender. This one is a wild cut. You very, very rarely see this. It's a speciality. It's something that you can obtain from Fragrant Earth. It's not on the list. You just ask them, do you have a speciality? Yes, it's available. Here is your Mayette. Now the Mayette that we're talking about is the common lavender, the French type. Notice I said French type. We're going to discuss that a little more in a moment. You take a spill and you put it into your lavender. You take your aroma there, a little bit there. You have a softness. Beautiful. And yet you notice I'm saying that it's clonal lavender, fit for a purpose. Ideal in perfumery. Ideal in better quality soaps. Ideal for high-class cosmetics. However, if I was in medicine, I would choose another one. Perhaps I would go to the high altitude, the workhorse of the aromatherapy range from Fragrant Earth. You notice I take this from the bottle. First, the right hand nostril, because just like our hands and our legs and feet, we have a right hand and the left hand in our nose. Perhaps you didn't realize that. Let it come to you. Don't sniff. And then the other side. Just take it in. Back again. You can play with this for hours. Not so much with the lavandins, because they have less in the way, if you like, of impact. Also, I like to take it from the bottle, because if you have something which is vital and full of energy, it should leap from the bottle. You shouldn't necessarily have to use a spill or something like that. A couple of other curiosities that I've got here for you. This was cut in France at the time of the eclipse. Is it better or less? Well, to some people, and perhaps with a particular spiritual view, this is really important. So it was taken at the time of the eclipse in Provence from population lavender. How amazing. Do you think we're going to sell that honestly at the same price as lavandin? We're also in business. We're realistic. Something else that's a little bit interesting just come to us just this year, and take the top off. Again, population lavender, grown by a farmer up there at the top of the Drôme in France. And interestingly enough, you know what his total production was? 10 kilos. That was it. All we could buy.